The extension period for 2022 taxes has passed, meaning it's time for you to go to jail. While you're in there, you might meet a pretty cool dude named Wriothesley, Worcestershire. And this dude slaps with a closed hand and really big gloves. They felt like showing his bare hand to Genshin fans might be a little inappropriate, which I think is fair. Anyways, in this video, I'm gonna go over what Wriothesley does and how to build him so you can start the next Ice Age. If you enjoy these types of videos, make sure YouTube knows they don't suck by liking and subscribing. And with all that being said, my name is Braxophone, and let's talk about Premium Sampo. First off, this guy is a Catalyst user, but you wouldn't really be able to guess that by the bruises left on his high school bully. Wriothesley is a boxer brawler, for lack of better terms. He's a Catalyst that punches like Hazo, except the main difference is Wriothesley actually looks good. You know how Captain Falcon punches with so much speed that his fist catches fire? Well, Wriothesley punches so slow, ice catches his fist. And his attacks do pretty low damage. That is, until you activate his elemental skill, which gives him a bonus on his normal attacks when he's above 50% HP. Essentially, this guy is kind of just CRYO if CRYO wasn't a complete disappointment. He also doesn't have the ranged aspect, so you're a bit more limited to the enemies you can actually fight. He also loses HP whenever he hits an enhanced attack, but it's fine because he has a passive that gives him a big portion of his HP back when he's below 60% HP and uses a charged attack. That charged attack doesn't cost stamina and deals increased damage as well. It can only really proc once every 5 seconds, but it helps him not insta-die from punching, which is pretty nice, and it's a necessary passive to have. You can tell when the enhanced charged attack is ready by this red mark that'll appear on him. The only downside is that playing Wriothesley optimally requires him to be between 50 and 60% HP as much as possible, which is pretty hard to do with a good healer and in new content, so he's a bit of a wild card when it comes to damage. But considering how bad some of the other characters I liked ended up being, it's kind of hard for me to care. There's going to be a bunch of different combos you can use to max out his damage. I'm not going to make you memorize these because I don't remember them since my one brain cell is currently spent on Jingliu. If you don't know what to do, spam basic attacks until you see the red mark, then charged attack, and then spam basics again. Basically, you're just going to charge attack whenever the red mark appears to heal up and dish out extra damage. Also, his normal attack combo can't really be canceled by like sprinting or anything, so don't worry about that too much. If you're playing with Bennett though, you can kind of just ignore the charged attack if you want. You won't really get it super often anyways, but it can dish out a fair bit of damage, so, you know, use it if you want, I guess. Another couple things about his skill are that the energy generation is kind of weird. Basically, he can only generate particles when he's above 50% HP using his skill, and it's not actually the skill that gives the energy, it's his punches. So, and it also does 0 damage when you use it, so anything that needs skill damage to work actually won't work with him. But hey, at least his second passive gives him bonus attack stacks whenever he loses or gains HP with a skill up. It's basically a free 30% attack buff. If you played like the third most disliked Blizzard game, then you'll recognize his burst animation, since the dude basically turns into Doomfist. The difference is though that Wriothesley is still a melee range character, so instead of flying to the enemy to punch them, he sends ice to the enemy and stays perfectly in place. His burst is where his wait, that's called OSHA, right? Is that right? His burst is where that thing activates, so honestly, he's not the most consistent character for it. His burst costs 60 energy, and his particle generation is kind of weird, but it does a bunch of damage when you don't completely miss, so that's nice. All in all, Rizzler is a lot like Saitama if Saitama had hair, dressed kind of nice, and did no damage. But he's fun, and he's also a JoJo character in JP, so we're gonna be swiping anyways. For talent priority, I'd level his basic attacks and level his skill and burst together. So you know that one video that I made a while back talking about the new artifact sets not being worth farming because Golden Troop was only a tiny upgrade on a few specific characters and the gimmick behind HP drain is too niche and unlikely to represent the entire 4.x cast of characters, and I didn't make up any fake excuses to why it would be good in my video because I wasn't looking at leaks like everyone else? Yeah, my bad. Apparently the entire gimmick of Fontaine is French Hunter, and it's just gonna be your go-to for every single character. 4-piece French crit set is going to be his best option since he can max out the stacks super fast, so you're getting a free 36% crit rate and 15% normal and charge attack damage bonus, which are all stats that he wants. Funny enough, that one set that literally nobody but Zhao used for like a year is really good on him too, since he gets bonuses for losing HP. Desert Pavilion Chronicle, Shimenawa's Reminiscence, Echoes of an Offering, Retracing Bolide with a shield, shield, and mixed 2-piece sets for attack bonus, cryo damage bonus, and normal and charged attack bonus are all good options for him that aren't too far apart in damage. In free specifically, 4-piece Blizzard Strayer is a great option that can even beat out the Hunter set. But in general, just because of the Fontaine gimmick, I would farm for Wriothesley Hunter even if you don't have a full set of it yet, because a lot of these characters from Fontaine have HP gimmicks, and it's proven itself to be pretty good on a lot of them. For main stats, you want to run an attack percent Sands, cryo damage Goblet, and a crit rate or damage circlet. If you're playing for Hunter or for Blizzard Strayer, you'll most likely run a crit damage circlet just because the crit rate boost is going to be so big from both of those sets. But the main thing to keep in mind is that you want a 1-to-2 crit rate to crit damage ratio. For substats, you're going to want to prioritize energy recharge to around 130% for most scenarios, and after that, just go for crit stats. Extra stats that are good are attack percent and elemental mastery if you're going to be playing him in a reverse melt team. I usually try not to get super tied up on specific stat numbers that you have to reach. Actually, if the one tying me up is Wriothesley though, I'd probably be down. Actually, yeah, I'd definitely be down, 100%. Wriothesley is a Catalyst user, and I know what you're thinking. This guy throws punches. What does he even need a book for? But what if I told you he could read? That's why his best weapon is clearly a book. It is a crit rate main stat, normal and charged attack damage bonus, and attack speed, which is a perfect fit for the Rizmaster. The second best weapon belongs to Mr. Moosh. And after that, Memory of Dust with a shield, Skyward Atlas, and Lost Prayer are going to be your best options. Tome of Eternal Flow is also a good pick, but I would imagine you put that on New Valette. If you happen to have the Widsith at R5, it's going to be your most solid 4-star option, especially in melt teams, where sometimes it can even be better than a ton of the 5-stars in the game. There's arguments not to use Widsith R5 in teams where you don't have elemental reactions, and that's totally fine, but it is a crit damage weapon. You're getting a ton of crit rate from his optimal artifact set, so it's pretty solid. Solar Pearl doesn't get a stack from his skill, but it can still be a solid stat stick. Blackcliff is in the same boat where it's just decent for stats, and Flowing Purity can be an amazing free-to-play option, especially if you can refine it all the way. In specifically Melt, Mapamare is also a decent choice, and other than that, most of the 4-stars fall into a pretty similar ranking, so just use a 4-star book, I guess. If building Wriothesley has taught me anything, it's not to judge a book by its cover, because it's not the cover of the book that's hitting you. Though his free-to-play weapon options are pretty limited, it's still gonna feel pretty great to play him, especially if you let Xiangling carry you. I know I've said this already, but this guy is like a JoJo character. I mean, he's literally voiced by the JP voice of Jotaro. The main difference, though, is that he can't solo everything like Jotaro can. In fact, his personal damage honestly isn't bad, but there are so many conditions to really max his damage that his damage ceiling isn't always super accurate and achievable at C0. So he will need a team to carry him. And one of my favorite teams to play him in is going to be Reverse Melt. Now, this is a very free-to-play version of it, and I'll show you guys a couple other options as well. But basically, if you want to really max out Wriothesley's damage, you need Xiangling. This is truly a Dia moment. We talked about this a little bit, but having a healer for Wriothesley makes it a little bit tough to get his Ascension passive activated, but if you don't have a healer with him, he's just gonna fucking die. So it doesn't really matter. You kind of just want to bring a healer anyways. And Bennett, of course, being able to empower Xiangling to be super busted, while also increasing the damage that Wriothesley puts out, is an amazing pairing to bring. So these two together are great. I just threw Rosaria in here as a 4-star option, but who I prefer to run here is actually Kazuha, because Kazuha will prioritize to swirl the Pyro, which will make it so you're basically guaranteed reverse melt on this dude. But it does make it a little bit difficult to swirl cryo when you have so much pyro going off at any given time. So it's something to keep in mind that it may be a little tough to actually get Viridescent off for the cryo, but it can be a decent option. You also have, of course, like Sucrose and stuff. So there you go. Another team I like to run with him is the Hyperfridge. At least I think this is the Hyperfridge. Honestly, I've lost track. The idea here is that Wriothesley is going to be an on-field damage dealer, but you already have so much damage coming out with Hyperbloom. Like Xingqiu and Nahida are already going to output so much damage on their own, and then Cookie's going to also be able to Hyperbloom that, which is great. But Wriothesley's also going to add his own personal on-field damage to that, which is going to be absolutely fantastic. He can basically freeze some of the enemies that already have the Hydro apply to them, but they can still get blooms activated. And then Cookie is going to basically obliterate them with Hyperbloom, because ever since Hyperbloom was released, this character is S tier. Nothing too complicated about this one. You can play other Hydros instead, like you can play Yelan. Yelan's another good pick here. And then if you have like other Dendro characters that you might want to play instead, you can play like Baiju here. Yao Yao, I'm a little bit skeptical skeptical of because I don't know it will be enough Dendro, especially because Yaoya wants on-field time, Wriothesley also wants on-field time, so it's a little awkward. Nahida is going to be the best pick for this. And then instead of Shinobu, if you wanted to, if you played like Baiju instead of Nahida, or if you played like Kokomi instead of Yelan or something, you could bring Raiden as well. And with Raiden, you're actually getting more Hyper Bloom opportunities. And I mean, she also looks really good. I actually, you know what, to be honest, maybe this is a hot take, but I actually think Kuki looks better. One of the other teams that you can run with him is obviously going to be our Freeze team. I actually like to run Jean specifically with him. I think Jean is great, especially if you have C4. If you've been around playing this game for a really long time, even if you're free to play, you might actually have C4 by now. I don't really know. This game's been out for over 3 years now, so there's probably a lot of people at least with Jean. Jean's going to be an Animo character that can swirl, but also heal your team a ton. Rosaria is obviously like a lot of damage. Xingqiu's a lot of damage, and these three can help freeze a lot. You could also run double Hydro if you wanted to instead. The nice thing about Rosaria is that she had the AoE for freezing, but this is probably going to be pretty solid damage as well. I didn't play the double Hydro version because like I already know Yelan and Xingqiu slay, and between those two and Wriothesley, we have 3 characters that slay, and then like if you're a Toronto fan, Jean probably slays or something. I don't know, I'm too fucking old for this. I have a feeling there's going to be other characters that come out pretty soon that are good supports for him. Same with New Violette, just, you know, because we saw Farina got the Trip Market and Charlotte as well. And it's possible that Charlotte and Farina could synergize pretty well with him. I can't say for sure right now because I genuinely don't know, but it's something to keep in mind, especially if you were planning on pulling for Farina. You can play him in Freeze, you can play him in Hyperfridge, so basically like you're guaranteed at the very least to have a character that could probably be useful in there, and like there's no way to make the Archon bad. Surely they won't make the Archon bad. One last thing to keep in mind is that this absolute machine of a human being is a really awesome and fun character, but he is a melee character, and that means that if you're playing Circle Impact with him, it's a little bit tougher. Like if you throw Yoimiya in here and you play Yoimiya with Bennett, it's fine because Yoimiya can stand in Bennett's circle and she doesn't have to like run anywhere most of the time, right? But if you're playing Wriothesley, you might have to leave Bennett's circle, which would really suck because then you just miss out on like a ton of damage, and like maybe it helps you balance your HP, but like I'm pretty sure there was like a viral meme about that on Twitter a few days ago, so I'm not going to recommend it. All I'm saying is it can be a little uncomfortable to play because you will have to run to your opponents, which kind of sucks, but when your enemies are giant and they don't move a whole lot, or if you bring them to like a corner or a corner of the circle in Spiral Abyss, because that's the best we got, then it's honestly not too bad. And while I was on the topic of Yoimiya, actually, a lot of the teams that Yoimiya can be used in, this guy can also be used in. This guy basically pairs with anyone that Yoimiya could pair with. Like you could even bring like Yunjin along for the normal attack bonus if you wanted to, and that would probably help a lot. Obviously Bennett's pretty sick here. The one exception to the Yoimiya rule of like you can play him in most teams, you can play Yoimiya, is probably going to be this one. Overvape doesn't really work with a cryo character. Your reactions are actually going to be like pretty weak. Superconduct kind of sucks, especially if you're not playing a physical unit, and honestly even if you are playing a physical unit, Superconduct sucks. Not only that, but he also is going to slowly kill himself with his punches, so that's just something to keep in mind. You absolutely can pair the Rizzler with these guys, but it's not like super recommended compared to some of the other pairings you could have. But like most Yoimiya teams, or just like replace some of them with Freeze, you could play him in most of those. So honestly, this guy really is just cryo Yoimiya, but like a bunch of more caveats. Next up, I'm gonna go shield C1 to you. So yeah. It's pretty clear what Hoyoverse is doing with Wriothesley. In fact, it's really super obvious. When they made him, they were thinking about how much money they could make off of Kaya power creep. Jokes aside, his C1 is super busted, and is to him what C1 is to Hu Tao, and honestly, debatably more. With C1, you're going to be giving him the ability to use his enhanced charged attack more frequently by giving him a charge of it after every 5th basic attack in the combo. It shortens the cooldown from 5 seconds to 2.5 seconds, letting you use that extra charged attack that's enhanced a lot more. I know I keep referencing JoJo's, but it kind of makes him a lot closer to Jotaro in the canon. C2 for Wriothesley is a damage increase based on the amount of stacks of attack bonus he has from his passive. This damage increase is specifically for his burst, and you should be able to get max stacks for this, but the main thing is just that you want to have your ult used after you've attacked a few times to adjust your HP level. The damage increase is solid for his burst, but his burst isn't the most important thing in his kit, so do with that information what you will. C3 is going to be a normal attack increase, which is nice for his overall damage, and C4 is an explosive used in the C5 is going to be your burst level up, and C6 basically just gives him a crit rate buff and a big crit damage buff on his enhanced charged attack, and also gives him an extra hit of damage that counts as charged attack damage. It's pretty good. I don't really know what else to say about it. All of his constellations increase his damage, but specifically because of his C1 being so goddamn good, this character to me genuinely feels like so much of his gameplay is actually constellation locked. And maybe that's a hot take, especially since the C0 damage is fine, but such a big damage increase and and quality of life change from an early constellation makes me think that this guy is basically made for Hu Tao mains. If you love this character and want to main him, and also don't care about Farina coming soon, going for C1 is probably worth it, and definitely more worth it than his weapon in this instance. But with that said, the weapon is still pretty good, and the banner for it has Elegy, so do with that information what you will as well. And as usual, don't waste money on gacha games. I have a throat infection, and it feels like I'm taking pyro damage whenever I speak, so I'm gonna take off. Enjoy your Tumblr, sexy man.